Hey everybody, and welcome back to A Man's Life. Here's part of my life for today. What we got behind me here is a late 40s, I think it's a 47 Ferguson TE20 that we are going to get rid of the 6-volt generator that is not charging and switch it over to a 12-volt alternator system. And I already did some of the wiring the other day, so we're going to go into that and I'll just show you what I did. That's pretty easy and straightforward. Pretty much all we're doing is taking the voltage regulator out, and it's all self-regulated within the alternator that I have. There's going to be some fancy schmancy stuff we got to do with the alternator itself to get it to fit on the bracketry down here where the generator sits. So we'll bring you along for that and show you what we're going to do there. And you probably can hear it in the background. I've got my oil burner cranked right up because it's, I don't know, about 2 degrees right now, maybe 0, and I'm on the lookout for polar bears. So let's get this thing going, and I'll bring you along for the ride on at least the important parts on exactly what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. Maybe not the play-by-play live version, but at least what I did and how I did it. So hang on and we'll get it dug into this. Okay, so here's the spot where the generator went. Bracketry is right down in here. You've got your top one, which would have been an adjuster, and the bottom one, which was stationary. Get that off on this particular tractor. You're going to need an 11/16 and a 5/8. That'll get your bolts off, and then you can slide the generator off. So the problem we've got is trying to fit the alternator in here and get your spacing right so that it lines up on the belt, because the spacing on this alternator are not the same as what was on the generator. You can see here, I'll kind of put them next to each other. You can see that if I put the front, line this up for you, if I put the front areas of brackets in the same, roughly the same spot, that these pulleys do not line up, not even close. So we're either going to have to build custom pulley, custom bracketry, whatever. I know there's kits out there, but from what I saw, none of them would work and were for the TE20 tractors. There were some that supposedly worked on, I think, the TOs, but nothing on the TE itself, and then all kinds of stuff for the Ford 2.8 and 9N series of tractors, but they weren't exactly the same. It didn't look like any of that bracketry would work, and to buy the bracketry you had to pay extra for the alternator and buy all the wiring, and I didn't want to do that because I used a bunch of the stuff I already had and just hooked it up differently. So I didn't feel the need to spend $150 or whatever it was on all that happy stuff. Oh no, it was like $90 I think for that kit on Amazon, and I think there was one on eBay as well, and a couple other sites have them too. But anyway, we're gonna have to do some measuring to get our setback for the belt and the pulley and all that stuff's right. Also, these pulleys are different size for different belts. This obviously is the pulley, the normal pulley, the stock pulley that came off the tractor, and its gap up here at the top is a little over 3/4 of an inch, and I don't even think this one's a half. So yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, that one's not even a half. It's probably meant for a 3/8 pulley, and I think this one's supposed, the stock one's a 3/4 inch pulley. or 3/4 inch belt. So we're gonna have to do some fanciness there. I'll see if this other pulley, stock pulley, will fit on the generator or on a new alternator, and we'll go from there. It should be quite the project. There's a bunch of other things we got to fix on it too, so we're gonna have a little series of my life here. You can see the steering rod right there. It's a little bent, and both sides need new joints right there, and then another one back there, and then there's a rod on both sides. So we're gonna have that to do eventually, not today. And so yeah, when I get this bracketry figured out and on there, so that it kind of works, we'll go over everything, how it's hooked up and how I wired everything up under here. I also put in a switch for lights and stuff eventually, because you can see I got a back blade and there's a bunch of snow on it, so we're going to be using this for plowing some snow and whatnot, and we could use some lights for that. So hold tight and we'll get you some information and whatever on how I take care of this. So just hang on, we'll get to it. All right, so we got, I think, our bracket made. Here you can see the old generator and the new alternator. Here is the part numbers for that, if you want to see what that is. I got it off of Amazon, because it ended up being the same price from Amazon as it was from my local parts supplier, farm store, and I did not need to come up with a core from Amazon, but I did at my local farm store. So I went and just got it off Amazon because it saved me 20 bucks. So right around behind me here, right there, you can see the bracket. I got primer on it. It's sitting by the heat curing because it's only 51 degrees in here. We'll go over that bracket a little more once the primer is dry, and I'll pull it down and we can take a peek at it. One other thing I need to get, right here is the stock belt, or at least what I assume is a stock belt, since I ordered it from a supplier that does all kinds of parts for these old tractors, and that's the belt that was supposed to come with this tractor. At least that's what they said. And I would say it's probably a little snug. It's very difficult to get on and off. So with the new alternator having centers and different things off a little bit, I'm going to need a slightly longer belt, and maybe an inch. This one's measuring 41.5, and I'm probably going to need one that's, 42.5, 43, something like that. I should have plenty of room to adjust things. What else did I want? Oh, I wanted to show you that the generator came with that pulley. This is the pulley that came on the generator over there. I thought, because that pulley is what came with the alternator, you can see this pulley almost it fits inside the one that's supposed to be on the tractor for the belt size. I thought I was going to end up having to buy a different belt or a different pulley, but the one off the generator worked just fine for putting on there. Same shaft size and everything. The only difference is the alternator was not keyed, so there's no key for it. It just works off of friction. So we got to make sure we torque that good and tight when we put it back together. What else we got? I'm going to put the Ferguson gray paint on that bracket. once after the primer dries, and we'll get it ready to go, put on. We'll talk a little bit about how I figured things out and what I did and where it connects and all that stuff. I think there's probably a kit that might work, but as I said, I don't know. It didn't look like it. The alternator that you got in the kit looked exactly the one that I have, other than the one I got is a 3-wire rather than a single wire, which isn't a big deal. And like I said, I don't think the brackets that came with, or that would have come with that kit, would have worked on this tractor. So they must have changed something in the way this front end bolts together, or something from those other models and other years. So yeah, we'll go into the we'll go into all the wiring, how I got that set up. Now that it's correct, I'll show you some of the things that I've changed along the way, and take an overview of this tractor and whatever we need to do. Hopefully this thing will work pretty simply. All we got to do is, right now we just got to get that bracket painted, and I need a longer belt. So I'm going to be off to the parts store to find us a longer belt. Spit it out. Okay, we'll bring you back when we're ready for the next step. Okay, so I just got back. I got multiple different sized fan belts to see if that'll get us what we need. We wanted to go over this bracket that I made, and I'll show you a little bit of how I made it and everything. So come over here. Here's the bracket. Let's see, we'll get down here. We can kind of see it here. Here we go. All right, so you can see the part that's kind of bent right there. That is just 1/4-inch steel that I got out of the scrap pile and did some work to, and put the holes in it where they needed to be. And then this is some, I don't even know, it must be like 12 gauge or something steel that I took, and I made the bracket for the top of the alternator to ride in, because if you're familiar at all with it, an alternator has a pair of holes, a stationary hole, usually at the bottom, which is on this side here. This one right here is a stationary hole, and then that is your tensioner hole. So it bolts in the bottom, and then you're able to tilt it back to tension your belt, just like the way the generator worked that was on the tractor. But the difference is the generator had its bracket and adjustments down here all welded on the bottom, and the alternator has one on the top and one on the bottom. So we couldn't use the same design without really hacking the alternator up. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to change anything on the alternator itself, so that way if it goes out, you need another one, you just get the same one and swap it out. So I made this bracket, and to get the part that goes around the alternator to the top, to get that the right shape, I used some cardboard. It took me 3 tries to finally get one that was big enough, and was big enough in the right spots to be able to wrap all the way around the alternator and give us the mounting holes where we needed them, and then be able to, in this case I welded it onto the larger bracket. So how we're going to do this, let me grab a flashlight here so we can have some light on our what we're looking at here. So let's see here, trying to get a flashlight to stay put. Alright, so we got a little bit of light down there. So now what we've got is right here, there's a couple of bolts, big bolts that go through here and mount, that helps mount this front piece, which holds the pivot and everything for the axle. It mounts it to the block on the engine, and that's where the old mount for the generator was. So I just copied that and then had to do some math to figure out the offset difference, because the offset on the generator where the pulley would go is different than it was on the new alternator. So I was able to switch pulleys over from the generator to the alternator, so our belt width stays the same and everything. But then I had to adjust the way that sat, just due to where it bolts on, because you can see the generator bracket is you know, pretty close to in line here. I would say your setbacks here are about the same, but the alternator has this big boss right here that sets it way back. So I had to do some adjustments with that to get it into the right spot. I also, wherever I put it here, should be laying up here. Apparently it's laying, oh no, it's over here in the tractor. I made a bit of a custom bolt too, because I didn't like the fit. I'm not 100% sure. The bore in the bottom hole on the alternator, it measured like 395 or 400 thousandths, and I didn't like the way a 3/8 bolt fit in there, which is only 375. It was quite sloppy. So I took a 1/2 inch bolt and I turned it down and threaded it 3/8, and got it, the part that's going to go through the alternator itself, I got it down to like 395, so it just barely slides right in there. And it's got a little bit of slop, but it's a lot nicer than the way a 3/8 bolt fit in there. So I'm not sure. There were some funny things that went on with cars in that, you know, late 70s into the early mid 80s, even into the 90s time frame, when we had half the things were metric and half were standard, and you couldn't figure out what's what. So I don't know. I honestly don't remember, but I think we got things figured out. The top bolt on that alternator is just a standard 5/16 National Course bolt, and one actually came with it. So I've got the bracket here drying. I think we're going to try and get it on there, be very careful about it, and see if we can get it set without boogering it up too bad, and let you know, because I've got about an hour before the wife has supper ready, so it'd be nice to have this thing done and out of here by then. And I'll get it on there, get the bracket on there, and I'll show you how that thing's going to sit, and then where the how the alternator is going to sit in there, and we'll go through some of the wiring too. So just hang on, and we'll move on to the next step. Oh, I'm sorry about the light and the way that it blows everything out here, but it is what it is at this point. So just hang on. All right, well, we didn't get her done before supper, so it's dark outside now. So we got everything wired up and ready to rock. I thought all I had to do was get the alternator in, but then I remembered I had to replace the coil, because you'll burn that out real quick running 12 plus volts to that when it's only a 6-volter. The other thing that should be replaced is the starter, because it's a 6-volt starter, and we're running, you know, we got a 12-volt, where is it, 12-volt alternator and a 12-volt battery up here now. So we're running 12 plus volts to it, and you know, that's not the best of things either. But I've read in a lot of places that for the most part, especially for the home gamer, that you'll be okay for a while. And considering the cost of a new starter, going ahead and using up your old starter is probably not the worst of ideas. So we'll see where that leaves us. And everything seems to work fine. I fired it up. You can probably hear the exhaust cooling off in the background. What I'm going to do is I'll flip this camera around and we'll go over starting it, and we'll do the wiring starting from the alternator, working our way back, show you how I've got the ignition set up, and we'll see if we can peek under there and maybe see the way the switch is wired for future lights, because I would like to put a working light and probably a tail light on, and then it does have provisions in the hood for all three of the sets of headlights, or all three headlights that it would have. It would have, I believe they came with one on each side, and then there was one that sat kind of on top of the hood. If you look on the hood right there by my finger, you can see kind of a lighter spot. That's actually a hole cut in the hood, and somebody patched it shut. And there's a hood mounted light that sits over the top there as well. But we'll see what we're going to do with lights. But I think something, at least, especially facing rear, you know, and obviously we should have some headlights on it. We'll put those in too. We've got provisions for it with a switch I put on the dash. You might be, nope, you probably can't see it. The steering wheel's in the way. We'll look at that when we flip this camera around, and I'll show you where we're at. So hang on, we'll get you moved in, switched around, and we'll go over this wiring. All right, here we are down looking at the back of the alternator. This particular alternator has your normal, this is where the charge wire goes in. This is what would charge your battery. Then these two up here on this plug, the red wire is the energizing lead, and then this white one is a sensing lead, so that you can have a idiot light. This tractor I have wired with a light and with an amp meter. Then there's an extra ground for it, even though it grounds through the case. I've got this ground strap run around, and it's wired into the bracket. I do believe I'm gonna have to do something with this bracket, make it a little sturdier, because it vibrates like crazy, and I can see that wearing that the bolt that's on the bottom under there. I can see that getting all bent out of shape and wearing out pretty fast. But anyway, that's the wires here. The charge wire and the sense wire run through this loom from the alternator, runs all the way up over to the back of the amp meter. Okay, as the power runs through the amp meter from one side to the other, it runs in on this side, it comes out on this side. This side is where I have the lead. It would be on the negative side of the amp meter. It runs from there to here, back to the battery, and that's what charges. As well, on the incoming side of the amp meter, there's or on the negative side of the amp meter as well, there is the ignition wire that runs down to the key, and I've got that running blue, and we'll look at that on the other side. So as well on this side, if you remember, there's the smaller wire here that comes out of the alternator right here. It comes out of the alternator white, wraps around, and it's a smaller red wire, and that runs through the loom as well. That runs into the idiot light right here. So it runs in one side, out the other side, and then that runs down to the key as well. So we'll work our way around here, and we'll come around this side of the tractor. All right, so here's our positive side. There's the amp meter. So we have the sense wire. That's the wire that runs the light, and this goes to the key for ignition. So that all runs down to the ignition, and then out of the ignition key, you can see the key right here. It runs underneath here to the coil. This is the positive side of the coil. See, it's still running blue. and then there's a ground side of the coil, and then all the rest of that stuff stays the same. Your points and whatever are in there. There's the starter that'll need to be changed eventually, I'm sure. Like I said, 12-volt battery. It's the one that, well, fits. It was on sale, and like Derek at Vice Grip Garage likes the handle. So everything's set up here. There's our amp meter, oil pressure gauge. This is the light for the charge system. I think originally there would have been something else in here than an amp meter, because it has the idiot light. And then this I have set up as a switch for a light. So eventually, there's the back of the light switch. We'll be able to run a wire to it, and run whatever lights we want. It's fused itself. The switch is fused. So that should take care of that. To clarify a little more on the wiring, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over to the wiring diagram that I printed off and I found rather helpful. Let me clear the spot out. So here's a picture of the back of the alternator itself. So we talked about the battery wire, the exciter wire, and the sensor wire. In this particular picture, for whatever reason, these are actually flipped. They should be the other way around, because the sensing wire is on this side, the exciting wire is on this side. And you can see that in this wiring diagram above, where number 2 runs to the same terminal on the back of the alternator as the charge port. And then that runs off to your battery or whatever. So we've got this all set up like this. You know, if you want to, I'll zoom in on it a little bit here. Yeah, that's pretty good. So if you need to do something, you can take a screenshot of that, or pause your video or whatever. As you can see, these guys, little triangle dealies, those are grounds, obviously, because it goes to the negative side of the battery. But you can see how it's wired through the light, through the ignition switch, all that stuff. So that should help. That was the best one that I saw for wiring. I've got a couple other ones there you might see under that there mess. They were not as good. They did not help. This was much more helpful. So I think that should work for just about everybody. This poor little tractor needs to have a paint job done on it, because all this stuff that's red should not be red. Everything should be this gray color. So we got some stuff to do there. This was rebuilt back in the 90s, late 90s, like 98 or 99. And whoever supposedly rebuilt it, I think was kind of a hack, but I'm not sure. There's been a lot of stuff on it that, whether or not the guy that rebuilt it was an idiot, or it's just been farmer fixed ever since, I don't know. But it's in good shape. 3-point works. The adjuster there for your plow and disc, for your depth adjust and everything on it, works. So it'll actually bounce up and down like crazy if you get too much weight on this, and it actually pushes the plow back into the tractor. But yeah, and this plow is a little big and heavy duty too for this tractor. I mean, it's not too wide, but it's way too heavy, I think, actually. Lifting this thing up actually takes weight off the front tires, and it's really hard to steer. So you do a lot of steering with the brakes. And I have these tires, the front tires actually filled with fluid as well. Granted, the rear tires are filled with chloride, and the front tires are filled with windshield washer fluid with isopropyl alcohol mixed in to keep it from freezing. And we've got a few oil leaks and different things, but you know, there's the alternator, and it spins, it charges. Here, I'll fire it up for you. We'll climb up here and we'll fire her up for you. So There's what it looks like on the dash. I'm gonna hit the key. See the light comes on. Yep, there's the idiot light. A little bit of throttle. And this thing is cool because instead of having a key switch you turn or a button that you push or something like that on having to have a neutral safety, this tractor will not start in gear because the shifter is your starter. So on this particular tractor, you have first, second, you can see the numbers, third, fourth is road gear. That would be straight back towards me. Then reverse is to this side and over, and then forward is start. There she is. And the light goes out. There. She works. So there you have it. That's what I did. Like I said, I think I'm going to have to work on this bracket a little better and get that a little more stable, because you can see it bounces. Yeah, you can kind of see it vibrating there. It vibrates pretty good, so I think we're going to have to stiffen that up with, we'll have to run a brace from the bottom up this side maybe, or something thicker. Or maybe I'll end up having to do something with making it out a 1/4 inch maybe, instead of the like 12 gauge that it is, or maybe even 1/8 inch, or we'll end up having to I'll wrap this outside and make it an L shape, you know, make it like angle. So, but yeah, I'd say she works. I'm going to get the snow cleaned off of it here and everything, and I'll get her parked back outside. I got to get my van inside because we got to be up for church in the morning. Yeah, so there she is. Fire's still going, nice and warm in here. I don't know, it's about 55 degrees. It's on a thermostat, so if I wanted it warmer, you can see the thermostat over there, that white thing over there. So yeah, up and running. It looks like it works, so we'll get things cleaned up in here and get ready for another day. So y'all, thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your weekend. Alright, well, I was out here finishing some things up, and I was going to move this tractor out as I got everything cleaned up here. And as I was running it, I was watching how this alternator was just vibrating back and forth like crazy, and I couldn't handle it. So what I did is I took a piece of flat bar and my torch, and I bent it around and made an L-shaped bracket for it that stops it from wobbling. I'll fire it up here so that you can see what the deal is. Let's see. Ignition. And now you should be able to see that it doesn't wobble anywhere near as much. Alright, I think we're set. I'm going to get this thing moved out of here, get my van in here, so things can thaw out and be warm for the morning. So we'll catch you all later. Thanks for watching.